So, what if Pow Pow World was a game? I recently decided that Pow Pow World should be a creature collector concept for a game. While this conclusion may have been very obvious to many of you, I really spent a ton of time contemplating over it. Initially, when I was conceptualizing Pow Pow World, I imagined it more as an animated show or a webcomic. I think those two art forms do a great job showcasing story and characters without the concern of gameplay mechanics, which at the time I didn't really care about since the project was all about concept and world building. Plus, most creature collectors are games, so it would help differentiate Pow Pow World if it were a show or a comic. But now that some of the groundwork has been laid out for Pow Pow World and there's a decent amount of creature designs, I wanted to focus on the story. And when I envision it through an animated series or a graphic novel, I end up coming up with a lot of blanks. But when I think about it through the lens of a game, the process is actually a lot easier. And it kind of made me realize that a game is a perfect platform for this project. When I was trying to come up with a story for a comic or a show, it felt like a viewer would be following someone else's journey, rather than having an adventure of their own. For someone experiencing Pow Pow World, it's important to me that they're creating their own story. And I think games really do that much better than a TV series or a comic can, since you as the player are actively participating and moving the story along through your actions and choices. However, my other concern in regards to Pow Pow World being a game was how do I differentiate it from other monster tamers, most notably Pokemon, since it will of course be compared. While I don't entirely love Pokemon's gameplay, I do love that it's a turn-based combat system. As someone who gets stressed out performing real-time actions like in an FPS game, fighting game, or MOBAs, or even Tetris, being able to take my time to make choices and come up with a strategy is super important to me as a player. But I was really concerned that making a creature collector game with a turn-based combat system would be too much like Pokemon and only feel like a Pokemon knockoff. However, what I failed to realize was that my knowledge of turn-based combat systems was extremely limited. Initially, when I tried looking up different monster tamers that use turn-based combat, they were all pretty much in line with Pokemon's combat system, where monsters essentially take turns attacking one another. Some would have little quirks like being only double battles or utilizing mana, but in its core, they were all you hit, then I hit, which is just a little stagnant for me. Even other non-Monster Tamer games I've played like Omori or Undertale with the turn-based combat system pretty much also play in that similar fashion. So I just thought that's all there is to turn-based combat. But fast forward to now, and my most recent creative endeavors have proved me oh so wrong. Specifically my time spent playing Baldur's Gate 3. Now I don't want to get too much into Baldur's Gate since it's a bit dense, so it'll be a very simplistic explanation of the combat system. In Baldur's Gate, it's a slightly more complex turn-based battle system that also utilizes 3D space. So you still have the traditional turn-based system of a game like Pokemon, but you also have things like 3D space, the environment, and positioning to consider. An aspect that I always felt was missing from Pokemon games, since in the anime there is so much movement and using your surroundings when Pokemon battling. So in Baldur's Gate, a character essentially has 3 core actions they can make during combat. They have their main action, which is usually an attack either through a physical attack or a magic ability. Then they have their bonus action, which is a lesser action like jumping to a higher platform or pushing a character to change their position. Lastly, they have their movement, which is a certain amount of distance the character is allotted, which they can use to position themselves. And each of these actions can be performed in any order, with the movement being able to be used multiple times as long as they have the movement to spend. I really like this battle system, and I think it would be a great starting point for coming up with combat for Pow Pow World. There's of course way more to it, but I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty of it right now. But in essence, it adds more decision making and complexity without being overwhelming. It also brings battling more to life and adds to that immersion of what I imagine a monster battle to be like, rather than just 2 stagnant creatures just taking turns hitting one another. If I had to sum it up in another way, it's almost like a turn-based League of Legends, for all my League of Legends players out there. With this kind of gameplay in mind, the vision for Pow Pow World as a game really started cementing itself in my head. Since the project has been so ambiguous in nature, just being a general creature collector concept, I've had trouble moving it along. But now that the project is under the scope of a video game concept, it makes it easier to come up with ideas and imagine it through a gameplay perspective. It also gives the project clear goals to work through and topics that need to be addressed. Basically, viewing it as a game narrows down the project, making the focus of the project more clear. I know it's all a bit rambly since it's kind of hard to put these thoughts and ideas into words, but I hope you kind of get the gist of what I'm trying to get across. Also, I just want to remind you that I have zero experience or knowledge about game development. meaning there is no promise or even real intention of making an actual game. But I do want to lay out the groundwork and do all the planning so that if one day there is an opportunity for this project to become more than just a concept, that it has a good shot in doing so. So just wanted to put that disclaimer out there so y'all don't get your hopes up too much. But with that, let's talk about some other things I plan on doing to differentiate Pow Pow World as a creature collector game. One thing I love about the Pokemon anime, and even One Piece for that matter, is the friends that you make along your journey. I've always loved the idea of an adventuring party made up of all sorts of friends and characters. So in Pow Pow World, I would like there to be a party system. And I'm not talking about just your collectible critter party. I'm talking human companion party, where you have the main player character, that being you of course, but you also are able to recruit up to 2 or 3 more characters to join you on your adventure. And these recruitable allies would be different characters that you meet along your journey. I love team building, which is why I love assembling a creature party, but why stop there? I think choosing who you want to befriend and travel with is also a super exciting choice and adds another layer of depth to the game, as well as making your journey more unique. Plus, it's more fun to travel in a party. Having allies also provides a potential for different kinds of battles as well. So in addition to the traditional one-on-one battles, there could be crew or squad battles. In these battles, you and your allies would each be sending out one Pow Pow and sharing the battlefield to take on your enemies. So you and your companions could support one another or potentially get in each other's way. Now let's talk about how allies would work from a gameplay perspective. I think each character would have their own way of being recruited, mostly through side quest type of missions where you help them out or you impress them through battle. Once you recruit an ally, you as a player would have control of them. Well, what does that actually entail? Would you be choosing what Pow Pow go on their team? So think of your main character as the leader while your allies are there to support you. They will ultimately follow your journey and battle according to your command, but they still have their own story beats and dialogues that will come up during the journey. And as for their Pow Pow team, you would also have control over that. But there's a catch. For your main character, there is no limit on what kind of Pow Pow you can have on your team. However, your allies might have specific types of Pow Pow they may want on their team. For example, you might have a chef ally who wants only fire type Pow Pow on his team. But it doesn't just have to be by type. Maybe you have an ally who only wants cute Pow Pow on their team, or an ally who wants Pow Pow based on bugs. So you would only be able to put certain Pow Pow on your allies' teams. I think this restriction is a great way of keeping the individuality of the characters and highlighting their personal preferences so that they don't just feel like an extension of your main character. I'm also thinking they should have at least one Pow Pow that they are locked into having, since when you meet them, they should have a partner Pow Pow of some sort. Plus, it's just another way to keep them unique. I still have a ton of ideas for gameplay that I can't wait to share, like customizability, items, and maybe even some romance. But I think this is plenty to chew on for now, and I don't want to overwhelm y'all. I'm really excited by the version of turn-based combat I've discussed, and I'm especially excited about the ally party system, since it's the #1 thing I've always wanted from a Pokemon game. I mean, we kinda have it with Pokemon Masters, but I'm not a fan of the gameplay of that app. But that's besides the point. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on these topics or anything else I've discussed. And if you have any suggestions on turn-based combat systems I should check out, please let me know. Bonus if you can sum it up for me, since I've researched a few and it can be overwhelming trying to learn and understanding them all without actually playing them. I hope y'all are excited as I am about this direction for Pow Pow World. I know a decent amount of you probably always saw Pow Pow World as a concept for a game, but I never seriously did until now. This new perspective on the project has raised so many questions that I can't wait to answer. As far as for the channel, things will still mostly be the same. World building, designing Pow Pow, but now it'll also include discussing gameplay ideas like in today's video. So look forward to that. Again, this is all discussion and concepting for now. But with that, thanks so much for watching, and I will see ya next time.